Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today is Rami Niranjan Desai. Rami is not new to our channel. She has been an active follower of what is happening in Northeast, and she has been considered a very realistic, neutral voice in what is happening in Manipur, which is going to be our focus today. And I'm going to bring you up to date on what has been happening in the last 48 hours. A lot of events have taken place. I want to first place all the facts in front of you before we go into what should be or what will be happening in the days and weeks to come. Now, first, let us welcome Ramiji. Ramiji, namaskar. Jai Sri Ram, how are you?
Namaskar, Jai Shri Ram. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for staying up so late. I'm very sorry. Somehow we couldn't get a better time than this. So first, Ramiji, with your permission, I'd like to show our viewers a slide deck of where things stand in Manipur as of today. Viewers, you can pause the video to look at and read the text. I'm going to go a little quickly because it is more important to get Ramiji's thoughts on what is happening than to know the facts. But we're just going to go through the facts quickly. September 6th, 𝗤𝘂𝗍 militants deployed long-range rockets in two locations in Bishnupur district in Manipur. One senior citizen civilian, 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙪 from Moirang 𝗣𝗚𝗂𝘁𝘁 𝗢𝙂𝘁 was killed. 6 other civilians were injured. Rockets were deployed among civilian population, causing significant casualties. Police teams and additional security forces have been rushed in to conduct combing operations in the hill ranges adjoining the area. We are going to give you the links to all these things. So in case you want to get more details, you can always click on the link. 3 bunkers, including 2 at Moalsang village and 1 at Laika Moalsau village in Churachandpur, were destroyed. Police teams from Bishnupur district, including the SP, rushed to the area but were fired upon by suspected 𝗤𝘂𝗍 militants. However, the police teams responded robustly and successfully repelled the attack. A military chopper has been deployed to conduct aerial patrolling. Authorities are closely monitoring the situation, and the police are prepared to respond to any contingency that may arise. On September 7th, 6 people were killed in fresh violence in Manipur's Jiribam district. The attack occurred in Nungchapi village, 229 kilometers from the state capital, Imphal. Suspected 𝗤𝘂𝗍 insurgents responsible for the attack. 63-year-old man Yerambam 𝗠𝘂𝘆 was among the victims. The incident followed a previous attack on an elderly Meitei man offering prayers in Moirang town. The earlier attack involved a rocket-propelled bomb by 𝗤𝘂𝗍 insurgents. Jiribam SP and a police team rushed to the area but were fired at, the police said in a statement, adding the team retaliated strongly and controlled the firing. They have destroyed 2 bunkers which were previously occupied by militants. An anti-drone system has been deployed, the police said, nearly a week after suspected 𝗤𝘂𝗍 insurgents attacked villages to the Imphal West district with weaponized drones. Army helicopters are keeping an eye on the ground while combing operations in suspected areas in both the hills and the valley are going on. On 7th, 5 others were killed in a gunfight between armed troops from the Meitei community and hill-dominant 𝗤𝘂𝗍 tribes, according to sources. The groups involved in the clash refer to themselves as Village Defense Volunteers. On 4th September, security forces conducted search operations and area domination in the fringe and vulnerable areas of both hill and valley districts. 115 vehicles on NH37 and 153 vehicles on NH2 were ensured safe passage with essential items. Strict security measures and convoys were deployed in sensitive areas to ensure the free and safe movement of vehicles. A total of 101 nakas checkpoints were established across different districts in Manipur. Police detained 131 individuals for various violations across the state. In 2 significant operations, this is again going back to the 4th, forces seized a huge cache in Churachandpur, Konkokpi districts. Churachandpur operation, 2 muzzle-loading guns, 7 12-bore cartridges and 1 Kenwood set were recovered during a search operation and area domination exercise. Kangpokpi operation, SLR with magazine, that is a .3.303 rifle without bolt, a single barrel rifle, 2 improvised mortars, 1 𝗤𝙧𝙤𝙪 hand grenade, 3 live ammunition rounds, 3 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝗍𝑚 radio sets, 29 detonators and 14 fired cases. Next. And these are some of the things that have been seized. So you have now a report on what has happened in terms of the actual events on the ground. Now we are going to talk about a couple of other things that you are seeing today, about how one Assam Rifles colonel was actually shutting his ears. We want to clarify on that. Ramiji has information on that. Like I said, Ramiji is a very well respected voice. Our goal here is to tell you the truth, and not to try and make one side look better or worse. I yield the floor to you, Ramiji. Let us talk first about that particular incident, and then after that, you can talk to us. You can go back a little bit if you would like to, and then tell us how you feel things are going to play out. Over to you, Ramiji.
Namaskar, Sree Iyer ji. As you know, I'm traveling. I'm out of the country, and I'm up this late because it's PGurus, and we know that there is a certain amount of factual analysis that you give space to on your platform. So that is the primary reason I'm here, and of course the fact that Manipur's again sort of come in the limelight for the wrong reasons. It's imploded again, which is a very sad thing because, like we discussed earlier on, I do feel that the rate of incidents, now, whether anybody likes this or doesn't like this, but the fact of the matter is that the rate of incidents from the peak of the conflict to today is not comparable because it's gone down. Having said that, this new spurt of violence is very disappointing because we'd seen a de-escalation. We had seen the rate of incidents come down. We had seen people trying to limp back to normalcy in the valley and in the hills. But this new escalation has brought it back into the limelight, and because of the usage of the word drones, because of the usage of drones, it's become very, very, it's captured people's imaginations. I've seen all news channels cover it. I have been on certain news channels as well talking about this. But unfortunately, unlike a lot of podcasts, specifically yours, we don't get a lot of space to explain this, in debates. You're only countering what the other person is saying. So, you know, trying to respond to a very large question that you've asked me, let me say one thing that I think the escalation of the situation is absolutely unprecedented. I don't think anybody expected it. And I don't think you expected where it would come from in terms of pinpointed area. How do you know where is something going to be launched from? This is not hand to hand combat. This is not people moving. These are not militaries moving. These are not militias moving. These are not, groups of people moving. This is remote controlled sort of offensive. It's very difficult to figure out where this is going to happen, how it's going to happen. I'm not saying that, that there hasn't been certain level of intelligence failure, because this is stuff at least we should know what people are collecting, what people are thinking. But because there's so much of complexity, I think it's been difficult for our agencies to possibly figure this out and pinpoint it before it happens and prevent it. But when we talk about this, and please allow me just a couple of seconds before you ask me a follow-up question. But if we look at this, when we talk about drones, we really have to start by asking, what are the drones that we are talking about? What is the usage of these drones? Where have they come from? How are they being operated? Are they being bought as a whole? Are they being assembled? Because that tells us a lot about the kind of background of where this is coming from. I don't see any news channel asking this. I don't see any news channel actually trying to figure out what these drones were, what was the make, were these assembled part, what sort of uh, configurations were there. Number two, I think it's very, very important for us to understand that any sort of usage like this is very dangerous to our national security. And I think that has dawned upon us, that whether, you know, whether it's killed a huge amount of people or a small amount of people, it doesn't matter. The fact that somebody feels emboldened to use this should have our antennas up. But we should also be asking the right questions, and I think it's a very difficult situation. We don't have a way of figuring this out. Like we've been hearing about like rocket launchers as well. A lot of the rocket launchers are not like guided missiles like you'd see. These are homegrown things, like they're used by taking out electricity poles. A lot of the kind of attacks that we are seeing are more sort of kinetic force, more than weaponry. They are rustic, they are rudimentary, uh, they are made at home. The knowledge comes from online websites. And we've not just seen this in this conflict, we've seen it in other conflicts also. So, as dangerous as it is, as many lives as it is taken, I don't think these are very sophisticated uh, ways of attack. So, I think we must keep that in mind before we continue this conversation further.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of observations. First off, I don't know, maybe there is some sensitivity about this. Viewers, that video that you are seeing, that clip, that is part of a 20-minute video, and you should not come to conclusions looking at just a small 30-40 seconds clip. That's all I will tell you. A lot of things took place before that. There was an objective for the Assam Rifles to get some place. I'm not going to tell you more than this. Ramiji told me a little bit, but I don't want to tell everything there. The important thing that you need to understand is passions are inflamed. People are feeling that one side is being given the benefit of doubt. Perhaps it's not true. You have to give some time for things to settle down. So number one, that I wanted to clarify that's a 20-minute video. Don't look at the 3-minute video and draw any kind of conclusion. So you will find the 20-minute video. It will surface in a few days. Then you will know what it was. Next, Ramiji, I wanted to ask, you want to add something on that? Because I have two more questions
Yes,
for you.
of course. You'd asked me about the video earlier on also. And of course, we haven't seen the entire video, but we know that this is a part of a larger video. And we must exercise some amount of constraint in passing a judgment, because I think, in when emotions are flared up, and as they would be, there are children who've been hurt, there are mothers who've died, and it's not just unfortunate, it's very unnecessary, And I would expect anger to be peaking and emotions to be extreme. But I think what is the test of our intelligence is the fact that we can be rational, and we can be able to see things in perspective even under pressure. And I think what you said about the 20-minute video is very correct, that we must take everything with a little bit of pinch of salt. Of course, the little bit of the snippet that we saw wasn't very flattering, at least on uh, at least for our commander who was putting his fingers in his ears. It wasn't a flattering video, that 20 seconds that we saw. But it has a context, it has a perspective. I don't think we're in a position to endorse or defend anything. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, our forces have played an important role. There has been a deficit of trust. I don't think we can shy away from that. There has been a slight deficit of trust for whatever historical reasons, legacy reasons. But that deficit of trust must remain a deficit of trust, and then, improve with overtures from both ends, especially from the end of the responsible party, which is our forces. Having said that, I also must say, if we lose trust in our forces, if we lose trust in, uh, you know, the nation and people of the nation, we've really lost the war then. Then we've given into the hands of what other people want. This has been a particularly disturbing event, because I've seen a lot of people, and I'll be honest with you, I have a lot of friends from both the communities and beyond, from other states as well. And this is the first time that I've seen a lot of my friends who've been rational, a lot of my colleagues who've been balanced, you know, let emotions get the better of them. And like I said, of course, nobody's blaming them. Of course, they would, if they've been in this situation and they're not getting absolute peace. But again, we have to look at things in context. This is an unpopular view. To ask people to look at things in context is a very unpopular view, because what I see happening more often than not is we're saying things to aggravate emotions. And aggravating emotions makes you lose sight of what the facts on ground are and what the practicalities and the impracticalities on ground are. And let me say this, there have been conflicts before, conflicts that have gone on for far longer than this, because it is a community to community conflict, because there are vested interests, and because there are radicals in each side of the conflict. There are people who see the benefit in continuing this conflict, people who see the benefit in or groups who see the benefit in uh, enraging emotions. We've seen media do that. We've seen podcasters do that. We've seen new age commentators on the Northeast do that. You know, we were talking about this, you and me, earlier on. What are people saying? Oh, China's involved, US is involved. I'm not saying that there isn't reason to believe that, right? I'm saying let's take the argument one step further. Let's take the debate one step further and let's find out how. When the conflict happened in Nagaland, uh, the story of the demand for Greater Nagaland, one of the longest running insurgencies in this country, the Naga separatist leaders had walked through the difficult terrain of Myanmar, through the Yunnan region, and taken ideological and practical training, tactical training, physical training in China, and come back. Is that happening here? No, it isn't. You know, previously when we had seen this happen, we had also seen a certain amount of not just ideological or physical or tactical sort of back end, but we'd also seen weapons that had come in. This was Scott. I'll give you an example of Reverend Michael Scott, who was during Nehru's time, was one of the guys who had said he'd negotiate between the Nagas and the government of India, and then they found out that he was completely playing another game, and there's been allegedly uh, boxers from a very famous international charity that used to have weapons come into Nagaland, and it was a Western charity organization. So there was proof, there was solid proof. What is the proof right now? We don't know if, there's no proof that they've taken training anywhere. Weapons, there's all sorts of weapons floating around in Myanmar. Why do we think that, these weapons can't come from there? When we talk about drones, CNA, the Chin National Army, which is across in Myanmar, has a drone team. How do we know that you don't get the intelligence from them? They have drones that are assembled from parts that you can find, and they've assembled it on ground. So that would make more practical sense to bring it from right across Myanmar than it would from somewhere else. Same with the weapons, the militias, the civil war like situation in Myanmar, unfortunately for us, has we have now to contend with all the ethnic armed organizations or militia groups, whatever you want to call them, whether it's Arakan Army, whether it's the Tang, MNDAA, so on and so forth, all equipped with high-end military equipment, because there's an offensive against the junta. So how do we know it's not those weapons that they're buying? How do we not know that it's, secondhand weapons that they're buying? This is one aspect. The other aspect that people have been saying, because obviously this gets them a lot of views, this gets people excited, is the US angle. Again, I'm saying that it's not wrong to say that. I'm just saying let's take the argument one step further and say, okay, if it is that, then how is it that? Like, how does it become a strategy? Are the Americans on ground? No, they're not on ground. You know, uh, how is it that they are involved? Are they destabilizing this region? Of course, there are certain policies that they have in Myanmar that have destabilized Myanmar. I don't agree with it, whether it's the Burma 2020 sanctions, whether it's wanting to give so-called humanitarian aid to the NUG. I think from there on it would go into the militia hands, and that aid would be used to buy more weapons. Whether it's the ignorance of the fact that there's massive methamphetamine production in Myanmar, or poppy cultivation, so stuff like this, of course, when you ignore stuff like this, it's emboldening forces. Of course, one of the biggest telltale signs is Bangladesh. Before Sheikh Hasina's regime was overturned, she very candidly said that she met a white man who, in return for an easy election, said that he would, that there could be a settlement, and they wanted to carve out a Christian state. She said the state would be carved out from parts of Bangladesh, Myanmar. She didn't say the third country, but she said that there's a third country involved, but I'm not going to name it. Any observer from this region would know that it is the Northeast, it is India. So, of course, all these fingers point to the US, but is the offensive right now directly connected? Is the question that we need to ask ourselves. Of course, analysis can be different. People can have different values of information. I could be wrong. But in my opinion, I think all of these overtures embolden groups on ground. It allows them the access to money to buy weapons, because if you're poppy cultivating, and even if all your poppy fields are burnt out, you can still traffic drugs. You know, uh, if
Crystal
and
meth.
that's
Crystal
sorry,
meth.
crystal
Crystal
meth.
meth.
Crystal meth is only one of them. Yaba pills, uh, methamphetamines. Heroin. Heroin was one of the biggest problematic issues for Manipur and Mizoram, and we knew it was such a big issue not just because of the halts that we had caught, but also because these are intravenous. A lot of the drugs that were coming in were intravenously taken, and therefore the rate of HIV was very high. So we knew why that was happening. But even other drugs like methamphetamines, things like yaba pills, Myanmar has become the biggest hub of production of any of this in the world. This is not even, I'm not just saying in the region, in the world. So where is it going to come? Of course, it's going into the Golden Triangle, and production is happening there, whether it's Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and then from there on it goes to Yaba pills have reached Australia also. But largely the impact has been enough. Let me say this again: the impact has been enough that in Bangladesh, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was 2020, wherein it was made, the law was made into a death penalty for trafficking or producing or bringing in Yaba pills. Can you imagine how big the problem would have been for them to, enact a death
Enact. Yeah.
penalty for this? In India too, in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, there was a meeting headed by the Home Minister in Tripura, where all the chief ministers had come in, and where he had said we must have a very concentrated and concerted effort towards stopping drugs coming in. Now, it's not just because the drug usage will increase, it's not just because these are contraband items, but also because, if you're looking at national security, you realize the kind of impact that this could have, the kind of money this could be bringing in, the kind of exchange that could be happening for weapons. So all I'm saying is, instead of just exciting people, inciting them, talking about, oh my God, the bigger geopolitical picture without having proof, doesn't really serve any purpose. We have a problem. We need to accept it. It's in the Northeast, it's in Manipur, it's a precarious area, it's gone on for too long. We want complete peace. But we are not going to be able to assess that until and unless we look at things factually and not emotionally. Again, I am saying this is an unpopular view, because we like to be we like to be engaged in, finding out new information, or, being, just a little bit more involved. But I don't think that gives you good analysis and good facts. So let me just say this. You're right when you say that there's a 20-minute video. I think that, let's not go on offensive. Let's look at, what the problem areas are and how this can be solved without this becoming a political score settling, which is what it's becoming now.
Yes, indeed. And one other clarification or one other surmise from a friend of mine, very reliable source, was that, see, you said that the rockets are not, very position seeking, they're not very accurate. And what I found actually adds to what you just said. It said that they did not want to aim the rocket at the first Manipur chief minister's residence, which is where it ended up, and unfortunately took the life of a priest who had come there to do some rituals. It was intended for a Subhash Chandra Bose museum, which is just a few meters away from there. See, the idea here appears to be to try and, go and get at the heart. If somebody comes to know that Bose's museum has been attacked, it makes you feel even worse. So there is this psychological warfare also going on to try and make Hindus feel helpless, that, okay, Bangladesh is a different country, we can't do much. Here it is our own country, and still we are not able to do. So there is this psychological war also going on. That's why Ramiji and we are trying to stay with the facts here and say, this is where things stand. We have to give time for the forces to, get back the situation under control. It's going to take a few days, but we will be back again following it very, very closely. Ramiji, in summation, please give us a conclusion on where you think things are headed, and then we'll call it a wrap. With a promise from you that you'll be back in a week's time.
I will be. And I hope to be proven wrong. I have no great benefit in being proven right. So I hope I'm wrong, and I hope it's quicker than that. In the next 1 day, 2 days, things are sorted out. But having said that, you said this very correctly. That there seems to be some amount of attention seeking. And I've always said this, that now that there's attention diverted, that Jammu and Kashmir elections are coming up, there's Bangladesh that has just happened. The focus seems to be going from Manipur. Now, we have to understand this psychologically as well. The people who are behind this, the perpetrators, they want the attention back on them because their agenda has not been completed. Now, I do believe, and I'll be very candid about this, I do believe that the agenda is to have some sort of separation from what the status quo is right now. I have always said this publicly, and I've got a lot of flack for it, that separation is never going to happen. These communities have stayed together for, generations, and all communities are equally emotionally invested in the lands that belong to them. Some of the lands are overlapping as well. Now, the problem started, and let's be very, very careful about this, because we've forgotten where the problem started. The problem started with the Meiteis feeling that there's a demographic change happening, that, they don't get any benefits that a scheduled tribe status gets, that they're confined to the Imphal Valley, and there just isn't enough space for growing population. People are moving outside, and if you do go to Imphal, it is a very different picture. Ask anybody who's been there 50 years ago and today. It's overcrowded because, it's just a small little valley after all. On the other side, the Kuki community felt that we have not been given fair sort of development and representation and infrastructure and so on and so forth. Now, the problem is that we've forgotten both the demands. Now it's just become a fight. Where is the demand for the ST tribe? I'm not saying this is the greatest time or anything, but I'm saying, where is the dialogue? Where is the dialogue for better development? That is also not there. Now, here's the thing. If you want better development, you already have hill councils. Hill councils represent all the, hill councils represent all the communities that live in these areas. They are represented in the hill councils. Now, if there isn't the kind of activity that you want, then you demand for more empowerment of the hill councils. You don't demand for separate land,
Right.
separate state, and I think that, yeah, you can demand for it if it was another place, but Manipur, unfortunately, is not very conducive for that, because everybody, there's not just two communities, there are three communities. There's the Nagas, there are the Cookies, there are the Meiteis. But then over and above that, there are also other communities who are business communities there, like the Marwadis, the Tamils. Now, everybody has had to run away. Places like More, which used to be really, really like multicultural, are no longer multicultural. And who will want to go back and risk their lives? Poor people, even laborer that comes from out of the state, they've been attacked. Their livelihoods have, been completely, you know, it's disintegrated. So there's nothing for any other community to be there for. So now the three indigenous communities are there, but these three indigenous communities, you know, in all honesty, there isn't any fine demarcation of land. So when you ask for separate administration, when you ask for union territory status, you're only thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about the other communities who also think that this is your land. So I think there has to be a midpoint. If you feel that, and this is entirely my own opinion, if you feel that there isn't any sort of money that's coming into the hill areas for development, there isn't any infrastructure, then you ask for financial independence. You ask for some sort of direct financial autonomy. But if you're just going to want it for political power, that's not going to happen. um, and here's the other problem, that a hill council is constituted of many, many tribes. All tribes are not of the same size. How are you going to ensure that all tribes are going to be represented? Now, in any case, if you think that you can do that, and if you think that finances are the only thing that are limiting you, then that's what you should ask for. But nobody's talking about that anymore. Now it's become such trust deficit. The fault line has become such. And let me say this without any fail, because, when I say this, uh, I've also noticed of the recent times, since the elections and since Congress has won both the seats, and I understand, why another party has been able to win these seats, because people have been disappointed and there was a conflict. But let me also remind everybody this, and I'll be very clear, I am not a fan of the Congress, because I have seen what the Northeast was under the Congress and what it is today. I've seen the great difference. It's very unfortunate that this conflict has happened. But who were the people who pitched the cookies? Who were the people who used the cookies against the Meiteis and other communities? It was the Congress. Who were the people who applied this divide and rule policy? It was the Congress. Who were the people who didn't bother? You see, illegal immigration and demographic change, as you would know very well, and all your very intelligent audience would know this as well, hasn't happened in the last 5 years. Demographic change has happened over the last few generations and decades. Why is it that in Manipur there wasn't 1 inch of fencing that was done? Why is it that today, even today, representatives of the Congress cannot clarify to us whether they would support an NRC or not? Nobody can clarify this. There is some ambiguity. They bring in the CA. They don't even know basics, like the fact that CA was was not going to affect the Northeast, but it made people anxious in Manipur, and ILP was you know ILP was reinstated, or was instated in Manipur, because people were anxious, and that's what this government did. But to use that as deflection for the NRC is not a good enough argument. And if people support this sort of an argument, let me say they don't support the territorial integrity of Manipur. And that is where my basic concern lies. And that is where my basic concern ends. I am not from Manipur. I do not belong to one of the tribal communities. I have nothing to gain. I'm never going to go and live there. I have zero political interest. But the territorial integrity of this country, the territorial integrity of Manipur is hugely important to me as it is to any nationalist Indian. And if anybody comes to me and says that, oh, the Congress had our benefit in mind, they don't know their history, they don't respect their legacy, and they don't respect the fact that their future will be in jeopardy, because it's not about one person. In the Congress, it's about the leadership, and you follow the party line. And that's where it begins and that's where it ends.
Thank you so much. Very strong words and very poignant. And I hope that viewers take this thing and try to analyze it. No point in rushing and emotionally getting charged up. A lot of things have gone wrong, and it didn't happen in a day. So thanks once again, Ramiji. And viewers, we think that the situation will start stabilizing again, because everybody knows what the thing is, where it's coming from, who are the parties involved, how the funding happened. At this point of time, Ramiji says that she doesn't think there is any other country involved. There is a lot of money because of drugs. So that is where things are. So we'll wait and see for a few days, and things hopefully will improve. And I am very confident that's going to happen, because already a lot of action has taken place in the last few hours. So thank you once again, Ramiji, and we'll be back again very soon with you. Namaskar.
Thank you.